General Rebecca Hayes laughed when Major Diana Cross requested the classified stealth reconnaissance mission over the Baltic Sea. "You're 47 years old, Cross," Hayes said, dismissing the veteran F-22 pilot with a wave of her hand. "We need someone with faster reflexes for this operation." What Hayes didn't know was that 12 hours later, Diana would slip her Raptor through the most sophisticated radar network in Europe without triggering a single alarm, completing a mission that 3 younger pilots had already failed. The rejection stung more than Diana expected as she stood in the sterile briefing room at Lakenheath Air Force Base, watching General Hayes flip through personnel files with surgical precision. 23 years of military service, 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, and over 3,000 flight hours in the F-22 Raptor apparently meant nothing when measured against the calendar. Diana had seen this pattern emerging across the Air Force over the past 2 years, as younger commanders prioritized what they called digital natives over experienced veterans who had learned to fly before GPS and fly-by-wire systems became standard. The mission briefing had been tantalizing in its complexity. Russian forces had deployed a new integrated air defense system across the Kaliningrad exclave, creating what intelligence analysts called an impenetrable bubble of overlapping radar coverage and surface-to-air missile batteries. The system reportedly incorporated advanced artificial intelligence to predict and counter American stealth technology, making it the most sophisticated threat environment any NATO pilot had ever faced. 3 previous reconnaissance attempts had resulted in mission failures, with pilots forced to abort when their aircraft were detected and tracked by the mysterious new radar network. Captain Riley Morrison, the squadron's golden boy at 28, had been selected for the next attempt. His file read like a recruitment poster for the modern Air Force: top graduate from the Air Force Academy, exceptional scores in simulator training, and what General Hayes described as intuitive understanding of next-generation avionics. Morrison had never flown in actual combat, but he possessed the kind of technological fluency that older pilots supposedly lacked. Diana watched him accept the assignment with the confident smile of someone who had never experienced real failure, never felt the weight of life-or-death decisions made in milliseconds while enemy missiles streaked toward his aircraft. The dismissal felt personal because Diana had specifically requested this mission after studying the intelligence reports and recognizing patterns that others had missed. The Russian radar system's sophistication reminded her of challenges she had faced during her deployment to Afghanistan in 2018, where adaptive enemy tactics had required constant innovation from American pilots. She had developed techniques for operating in contested airspace that weren't taught in any manual, hard-won knowledge that came from surviving situations where textbook procedures would have resulted in her death. But General Hayes seemed more interested in youth and theoretical knowledge than practical experience earned through years of flying in hostile environments. Diana's background made her uniquely qualified for missions that pushed the boundaries of what F-22 pilots could accomplish. She had graduated from the Air Force Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base, where she had participated in classified programs that explored the outer limits of stealth technology. Her master's degree in aerospace engineering complemented practical experience that included emergency landings in damaged aircraft, night operations in zero-visibility conditions, and combat missions where split-second decisions had saved both her life and the lives of ground troops depending on her support. She understood the F-22 Raptor not just as a pilot but as an engineer who comprehended the intricate relationships between stealth characteristics, engine performance, and flight envelope limitations. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on Diana as she gathered her flight gear from the squadron locker room. She had spent the past year training younger pilots on advanced F-22 systems, sharing knowledge that had taken her decades to acquire. Captain Morrison had been one of her students, eager to learn from her experience while apparently believing that his natural aptitude would quickly surpass her accumulated wisdom. Diana had seen this attitude before in young pilots, who confused simulator performance with real-world capability, who believed that understanding technology was equivalent to mastering it under the stress of actual combat conditions. Hunchie. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Stone, the squadron's operations officer and one of the few commanders who still valued experience over enthusiasm. Stone had flown with Diana during their deployment to Afghanistan, where she had saved his life during a mission that went catastrophically wrong when their intelligence proved inaccurate, and they found themselves surrounded by surface-to-air missile sites that weren't supposed to exist. He understood the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical wisdom between simulator performance and the kind of judgment that kept pilots alive when everything went according to Murphy's Law, rather than mission planning. Hayes made a mistake, Stone said quietly, ensuring their conversation couldn't be overheard by other squadron members. Morrison's good, but he's never faced anything like what the Russians have deployed in Kaliningrad. This isn't a training mission where mistakes result in simulator resets and debriefing sessions. This is the kind of operation where one wrong decision results in an international incident and a pilot who doesn't come home. Diana appreciated Stone's support, but she also understood the political realities that influenced command decisions. General Hayes represented a new generation of military leaders who had risen through the ranks during peacetime, making their reputations through administrative efficiency and technological innovation rather than combat leadership. The conversation reminded Diana of similar discussions she had witnessed throughout her career, as older pilots were gradually pushed aside to make room for younger officers who represented the future of military aviation. She had seen exceptional pilots forced into early retirement despite possessing knowledge that couldn't be replicated through training programs or simulator sessions. The military's emphasis on youth and adaptability often overlooked the irreplaceable value of experience gained through years of facing unpredictable situations where standard procedures provided inadequate guidance. Diana wondered if General Hayes had ever been forced to make split-second decisions while flying a damaged aircraft through enemy airspace, or if her understanding of combat operations came primarily from briefings and theoretical studies. The timing of the mission added another layer of complexity to an already challenging situation. Intelligence reports suggested that the Russian radar system would be fully operational within 72 hours, after which any reconnaissance mission would become exponentially more dangerous. The window for gathering critical intelligence about Russian defensive capabilities was rapidly closing, and each failed attempt reduced the likelihood that subsequent missions would succeed. Diana understood that the strategic importance of this mission extended far beyond routine intelligence gathering. The information collected would influence NATO's defensive planning for years to come and could determine the alliance's ability to respond effectively to future Russian aggression in the Baltic region. As she reviewed the mission parameters that evening in her quarters, Diana noticed details that suggested the operation was even more complex than General Hayes had indicated during the briefing. The reconnaissance route required precise navigation through multiple radar coverage zones, each with different characteristics that would require constant adjustment of the F-22's stealth configuration. The mission profile included low-altitude segments that would test the aircraft's performance envelope while maintaining minimal radar signature, followed by high-altitude reconnaissance phases that demanded perfect timing to avoid detection windows when Russian satellites would be overhead. Success would require not just technical proficiency, but the kind of operational judgment that could only be developed through years of flying in contested environments. Diana's analysis of the mission requirements confirmed her suspicion that General Hayes had fundamentally misunderstood the challenges involved. This wasn't a mission that could be completed through superior reflexes or intuitive understanding of modern avionics. Success would depend on experience-based decision-making, the ability to recognize subtle changes in aircraft performance that indicated potential problems, and the kind of situational awareness that allowed pilots to anticipate threats before they became critical. These were skills that couldn't be taught in simulators or acquired through theoretical study. They had to be earned through years of flying in situations where mistakes had permanent consequences. The rejection also highlighted broader changes occurring within the Air Force, as senior leadership struggled to balance the advantages of youth with the irreplaceable value of experience. Diana had observed similar patterns in other military specialties, where institutional knowledge accumulated over decades of service was being discarded in favor of presumed advantages offered by younger personnel. The irony was that many of the technological systems that supposedly favored younger pilots had been designed and tested by veterans like Diana, who understood both their capabilities and their limitations better than the officers who were now considered more qualified to operate them. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Her evening was interrupted by a secure phone call from an unknown number, the caller's voice carrying the kind of authority that suggested high-level intelligence connections. Major Cross, this is Director Sarah Chen from the Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to discuss the Kaliningrad mission. Can you meet me at Building 1247 in 30 minutes? The request was unusual enough to capture Diana's complete attention, particularly since DIA involvement suggested that the reconnaissance mission had implications beyond what had been discussed in the squadron briefing. She agreed to the meeting, curious about why intelligence officials would want to speak with a pilot who had just been removed from the mission roster. Building 1247 proved to be a nondescript structure on the edge of Lakenheath's main base, the kind of facility that housed classified operations but appeared unremarkable to casual observers. Director Chen met her at the entrance, a woman in her early 50s whose bearing suggested extensive military background despite her civilian clothes. "Major Cross, thank you for coming. What I'm about to discuss with you is classified at levels that very few people in the Air Force possess clearance to know about." The mission General Hayes briefed today represents only a small portion of what we're actually attempting to accomplish in the Baltic region. The revelation that followed transformed Diana's understanding of both the mission and her role in it. The Russian radar system in Kaliningrad wasn't just a defensive installation. Intelligence indicated it was a test bed for technology that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in modern warfare. If successful, the system could render American stealth aircraft obsolete, forcing NATO to develop entirely new approaches to air operations in contested environments. The reconnaissance mission wasn't simply about gathering intelligence on defensive capabilities. It was about determining whether the technology represented an evolutionary advancement or a revolutionary breakthrough that would require fundamental changes to American military strategy. Director Chen explained that 3 previous mission attempts had failed not because of pilot error or equipment malfunction, but because the Russian system had successfully detected and tracked the reconnaissance aircraft using methods that American intelligence didn't fully understand. Each failure had provided the Russians with additional data about F-22 capabilities, potentially improving their defensive systems while simultaneously revealing American reconnaissance techniques. The stakes were higher than anyone in the squadron realized, and the consequences of another failure could extend far beyond the Baltic region to affect American military operations worldwide. Diana listened with growing understanding as Director Chen outlined the specific requirements for mission success. The reconnaissance had to be completed without detection, which meant operating the F-22 in ways that pushed the boundaries of its design specifications while maintaining perfect stealth characteristics. More importantly, the mission required the kind of adaptive decision-making that could only come from extensive experience with both the aircraft and the unpredictable nature of combat operations. General Hayes had unknowingly selected Captain Morrison for a mission that required exactly the qualities she had dismissed when rejecting Diana's request to participate. Director Chen led Diana through a series of security checkpoints that required biometric scanning and credentials she had never seen before, despite her own high-level clearances. The classified briefing room they entered contained wall-mounted displays showing satellite imagery of the Kaliningrad region. But the level of detail far exceeded anything Diana had access to through normal intelligence channels. The images revealed defensive installations that weren't mentioned in the squadron briefing, including what appeared to be mobile radar units positioned to create overlapping coverage zones that would challenge even the most sophisticated stealth aircraft. Diana's military career had begun 23 years earlier when she was commissioned as a second lieutenant fresh from the Air Force Academy, eager to prove herself in a male-dominated field that still questioned whether women possessed the physical and mental capabilities required for fighter aviation. Her early assignments had been routine, flying training missions and participating in exercises that tested her technical proficiency without exposing her to the kind of real-world challenges that separated competent pilots from exceptional ones. She had excelled in every metric the Air Force used to evaluate pilot performance, but she understood that simulator scores and training evaluations provided limited insight into how someone would perform when facing life-or-death situations in hostile airspace. Her first combat deployment to Afghanistan in 2009 had shattered any illusions about the gap between training and reality. Diana discovered that textbook procedures often proved inadequate when facing adaptive enemies who didn't follow American tactical doctrine, forcing her to develop innovative approaches that combined technical knowledge with creative problem-solving. She learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when mission parameters were changing in real time, developing the kind of situational awareness that allowed her to anticipate problems before they became critical. More importantly, she discovered that successful combat operations required not just individual skill, but the ability to make decisions that affected the lives of ground troops who depended on air support for their survival. The Afghanistan experience had taught Diana lessons that couldn't be replicated in training environments, no matter how realistic the simulators or comprehensive the scenarios. She had flown missions where equipment failures forced her to complete objectives using backup systems that operated at reduced capability, requiring her to compensate through enhanced piloting technique and creative tactical approaches. She had navigated through weather conditions that exceeded the F-22's certified operating parameters, learning to recognize aircraft performance characteristics that indicated approaching limits while maintaining enough margin for safe operation. Most significantly, she had developed the ability to make rapid decisions based on incomplete information, a skill that proved invaluable when intelligence reports turned out to be inaccurate, or when enemy capabilities exceeded expectations. Her second combat tour in 2018 had been even more challenging, as Taliban forces had acquired more sophisticated surface-to-air missile systems that forced American pilots to develop new tactics for operating in increasingly dangerous environments. Diana had been part of a small group of experienced pilots tasked with testing experimental approaches to close air support in contested airspace, missions that required them to push their aircraft and their own capabilities to previously unexplored limits. The knowledge she gained during this period about stealth aircraft performance under extreme conditions had proven invaluable during subsequent training assignments, where she shared hard-won insights with younger pilots who were eager to learn but lacked the contextual understanding that came from actual combat experience. Between her combat deployments, Diana had pursued advanced education that complemented her practical flying experience with theoretical knowledge that enhanced her understanding of the complex systems that made modern stealth aircraft possible. Her master's degree in aerospace engineering from the Air Force Institute of Technology had required her to complete a thesis on adaptive stealth technologies, research that gave her unique insights into both the capabilities and limitations of the F-22's radar-evading systems. She had studied under professors who had participated in the original development of stealth technology, learning about design compromises and engineering challenges that weren't covered in operational manuals or pilot training programs. The combination of combat experience and advanced technical education had made Diana a natural candidate for the Air Force Test Pilot School, where she had spent 2 years participating in classified programs that explored the outer boundaries of what stealth aircraft could accomplish. Her test pilot experience had included flights that evaluated experimental modifications to F-22 systems, missions that required her to operate the aircraft in configurations that had never been attempted before, while carefully documenting performance characteristics that would influence future development programs. She had pushed the Raptor through flight envelopes that stressed both the aircraft and pilot to their limits, gaining intimate knowledge of how the plane behaved under conditions that most operational pilots would never encounter. During her time as a test pilot, Diana had also participated in classified exercises that simulated combat scenarios against hypothetical enemy radar systems, flying missions designed to evaluate American stealth capabilities against projected future threats. These exercises had revealed vulnerabilities in stealth technology that weren't apparent during routine operations, forcing her to develop innovative techniques for maintaining minimal radar signature while accomplishing complex mission objectives. The knowledge she gained about stealth aircraft limitations and countermeasures had proven invaluable during her subsequent assignment as an instructor pilot, where she trained younger aviators on advanced F-22 systems and tactical employment. Her instructor pilot assignment had provided Diana with a different perspective on the generational divide that was becoming increasingly apparent within the Air Force pilot community. She had worked with exceptional young pilots who possessed intuitive understanding of digital systems and demonstrated remarkable adaptability when learning new technologies, but she had also observed significant gaps in their understanding of fundamental flying principles that couldn't be compensated through technological proficiency alone. Many younger pilots relied heavily on automated systems and computer-generated solutions to problems that Diana had learned to solve through basic aerodynamic principles and mechanical understanding of aircraft systems. The contrast between experienced and inexperienced pilots became most apparent during training scenarios that simulated equipment failures or degraded system performance, situations where technological solutions weren't available, and success depended on fundamental flying skills and mechanical understanding of aircraft behavior. Diana had watched promising young pilots struggle with scenarios that she could handle routinely, not because they lacked intelligence or dedication, but because they hadn't yet developed the deep understanding of aircraft systems that came from years of flying in various conditions and configurations. She understood that this knowledge couldn't be accelerated through training programs or simulator sessions. It had to be accumulated through experience that took time to acquire. Her observations about generational differences in pilot capabilities had led Diana to develop training programs that emphasized fundamental principles alongside technological proficiency, ensuring that younger pilots understood not just how to operate advanced systems, but why those systems worked and what to do when they failed. She had created scenarios that forced students to solve problems without relying on automated assistance, building confidence in their ability to handle unexpected situations that might arise during actual combat operations. Her teaching methodology had proven successful in producing pilots who possessed both technological fluency and fundamental flying skills, but the approach required more time and resources than standardized training programs that focused primarily on system operation. Diana's reputation as both a combat veteran and skilled instructor had brought her to the attention of senior Air Force leadership, resulting in assignments that gave her broader perspective on how pilot training and experience affected operational readiness across the entire fighter community. She had served on committees that evaluated pilot training programs and recommended improvements to ensure that new aviators possessed the skills necessary for success in increasingly complex operational environments. Her recommendations had emphasized the importance of maintaining institutional knowledge that could only be preserved through experienced pilots who had operated in actual combat conditions. The administrative assignments had also exposed Diana to the political and budgetary pressures that influenced personnel decisions within the Air Force, helping her understand why younger pilots were often preferred for high-profile missions despite lacking the experience that older aviators possessed. She had observed how career advancement often depended more on administrative achievements and technological adaptability than on operational expertise and combat experience, creating incentives that sometimes prioritized perception over actual capability. The trend toward favoring younger pilots reflected broader cultural changes within the military that emphasized innovation and change over stability and experience. Her most recent assignment as a squadron pilot had brought Diana full circle to the operational flying that had originally attracted her to military aviation, but she had returned with a much deeper understanding of the complexities involved in maintaining pilot proficiency across different generations and experience levels. She had worked to bridge the gap between experienced pilots who possessed institutional knowledge and younger aviators who brought fresh perspectives and technological fluency, recognizing that both groups had valuable contributions to make to overall squadron effectiveness. However, she had also become increasingly frustrated with decisions that seemed to discount the value of experience in favor of theoretical advantages offered by youth and technological adaptability. The conversation with Director Chen was revealing aspects of the Kaliningrad mission that explained why Diana's specific background made her uniquely qualified for the operation, despite General Hayes's assessment that her age represented a liability rather than an asset. Chen explained that the Russian radar system incorporated artificial intelligence algorithms specifically designed to counter American stealth technology by analyzing flight patterns and aircraft performance characteristics that were available in published literature and leaked intelligence reports. The system's sophistication meant that conventional approaches to stealth penetration would likely result in detection and mission failure, requiring tactics that hadn't been previously employed or documented. Diana's combination of combat experience, test pilot background, and instructor pilot knowledge had given her insights into F-22 capabilities that weren't widely known even within the stealth aircraft community. She had participated in classified programs that explored unconventional employment techniques, learned to operate the aircraft in configurations that pushed its design limits, and developed tactical approaches that weren't included in standard operating procedures. More importantly, her experience with adaptive enemies had taught her to recognize when established tactics weren't working and to develop innovative solutions in real time. Skills that would be essential for success against a radar system specifically designed to counter American stealth aircraft. The briefing continued with technical details about the Russian radar system that confirmed Diana's growing suspicion that this mission would require capabilities that Captain Morrison simply didn't possess, regardless of his technological fluency or simulator performance. Success would depend not on following established procedures but on adapting to unexpected challenges using knowledge that could only be gained through years of experience with both the aircraft and the unpredictable nature of combat operations in hostile environments. Director Chen activated a secure display terminal that revealed intelligence Diana had never seen before, satellite imagery captured by assets she didn't know existed, showing the true scope of Russian defensive installations throughout the Kaliningrad region. The images revealed a network of integrated radar systems far more sophisticated than anything described in routine intelligence briefings, with mobile units positioned to create overlapping coverage zones that could track aircraft at multiple altitudes simultaneously. Most disturbing were the installations that appeared to be under construction, suggesting that what American intelligence had observed was only the initial phase of a much larger defensive project. The mysterious opportunity that brought Diana to this classified briefing room had its origins in a crisis that few people within NATO command structure fully understood. 3 weeks earlier, a routine satellite surveillance pass over Kaliningrad had detected electromagnetic signatures that didn't match any known Russian radar systems, anomalous readings that suggested the deployment of technology that American intelligence agencies had not anticipated. Follow-up reconnaissance missions using unmanned aerial vehicles had been unsuccessful, with 2 expensive drones lost to defensive systems that engaged targets with precision that exceeded anything previously observed from Russian air defense networks. The failure of conventional intelligence gathering methods had prompted a series of increasingly desperate attempts to understand what the Russians had deployed in their heavily fortified exclave. Signals intelligence satellites had detected communication patterns that suggested coordination between multiple radar installations. But the encryption methods being used were so sophisticated that American cryptographers hadn't been able to decrypt the intercepted transmissions. Human intelligence assets within the region had been unable to provide useful information about the new installations, reporting only that Russian military security had been increased to levels that prevented any meaningful observation of ongoing construction activities. Director Chen explained that the situation had reached a critical point when American intelligence analysts began to suspect that the Russian installations represented more than just improved air defense capabilities. Preliminary analysis of the electromagnetic signatures suggested that the Russians might have developed technology that could not only detect stealth aircraft, but could also track them with sufficient precision to enable successful missile engagement. If confirmed, this capability would represent a fundamental shift in the balance of power that had favored American and NATO air forces since the introduction of stealth technology in the 1980s. The strategic implications of Russian success in countering stealth aircraft extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation in the Baltic region. American military planning for potential conflicts in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and the Pacific relied heavily on the assumption that F-22 and F-35 aircraft could operate in contested airspace with minimal risk of detection and engagement. If that assumption proved incorrect, the United States would be forced to completely revise its approach to air operations in any future conflict, potentially requiring the development of entirely new aircraft and tactics that could take decades to implement. The urgency of the situation had been amplified by intelligence reports suggesting that Russian engineers were preparing to begin full-scale production of whatever technology they had developed in Kaliningrad. American intelligence agencies had detected increased activity at Russian aerospace manufacturing facilities, along with communication patterns that suggested the preparation of technical documentation for widespread deployment. If the Russians achieved operational success with their anti-stealth technology, they would likely share it with allies and client states, potentially neutralizing American stealth advantages across multiple theaters of potential conflict. Chen revealed that the first attempted reconnaissance mission had been flown by Captain Jennifer Walsh, one of the Air Force's most experienced F-22 pilots, with over 2,000 hours in the aircraft and extensive combat experience in both Afghanistan and Syria. Walsh had approached the target area using established stealth penetration techniques that had proven successful against conventional radar systems, maintaining altitude and flight patterns that should have rendered her aircraft virtually invisible to ground-based sensors. However, Russian defensive systems had not only detected her approach, but had tracked her aircraft with sufficient precision to achieve missile lock, forcing her to abort the mission and retreat to international airspace. The second mission attempt had been flown by Major Robert Stevens, a test pilot with extensive experience in evaluating F-22 performance under unusual conditions and intimate knowledge of the aircraft's stealth characteristics. Stevens had modified his approach based on lessons learned from Walsh's mission, using different altitude profiles and flight patterns that pushed the boundaries of established stealth doctrine. Despite his innovative tactics, Russian radar systems had again achieved detection and tracking, forcing another mission abort when surface-to-air missile systems demonstrated their ability to engage his aircraft. The third mission failure had been perhaps the most disturbing because it involved Captain Lisa Rodriguez, who possessed unique qualifications that combined combat experience with advanced technical knowledge of stealth technology. Rodriguez had attempted to complete the mission using experimental techniques that hadn't been previously employed in operational situations, approaches that were based on classified research into advanced stealth employment methods. Even these innovative tactics had proven insufficient against the Russian defensive network, resulting in another mission abort, and confirming that conventional approaches to stealth penetration would not succeed against whatever technology the Russians had deployed. The pattern of mission failures had forced American intelligence agencies to conclude that the Russian radar system possessed capabilities that exceeded their most pessimistic projections about potential threats to stealth aircraft. Each failed mission had provided additional data to Russian engineers about F-22 performance characteristics and American tactical employment methods, potentially improving their defensive systems while simultaneously revealing the extent of American reconnaissance capabilities. The intelligence value of successful penetration was being offset by the information that each failed attempt provided to potential adversaries. Director Chen explained that the analysis of mission failures had revealed specific requirements for any future reconnaissance attempt that went far beyond the parameters originally established for the operation. Success would require a pilot who possessed not only extensive experience with F-22 systems but also the ability to innovate tactical approaches in real time, based on immediate assessment of changing threat conditions. More critically, the mission would require someone who understood stealth aircraft performance characteristics at a level that would enable them to operate the F-22 in configurations and flight profiles that had never been attempted in operational conditions. The technical challenges involved in penetrating the Russian defensive network were unlike anything that American pilots had faced in previous conflicts, requiring knowledge that couldn't be gained through simulator training or theoretical study of aircraft systems. The mission would involve flying the F-22 at the absolute limits of its performance envelope, while maintaining stealth characteristics that depended on precise control of aircraft attitude, altitude, and airspeed. Any deviation from optimal parameters could result in detection, but maintaining those parameters would require pilot skills that could only be developed through years of experience with the aircraft under various operating conditions. Chen revealed that intelligence analysis had identified specific vulnerabilities in the Russian radar system that could potentially be exploited by a pilot with sufficient knowledge of F-22 capabilities and stealth employment techniques. The vulnerabilities were subtle and would require precise timing and execution to exploit successfully, but they represented the only realistic opportunity for mission success, given the sophistication of the defensive network. Exploiting these vulnerabilities would require tactical approaches that combined elements of test pilot methodology with combat pilot innovation, skills that very few pilots possess simultaneously. The conversation had reached a point where Diana began to understand why she had been contacted by the Defense Intelligence Agency, despite her removal from the mission roster by General Hayes. Her unique combination of combat experience, test pilot background, and instructor pilot knowledge had given her insights into F-22 capabilities that made her potentially the only pilot in the Air Force qualified to attempt penetration of the Russian defensive network. The mission requirements had evolved beyond what any routine assignment would demand, entering territory that required expertise that couldn't be acquired through normal career progression. Diana learned that intelligence agencies had spent weeks analyzing the backgrounds of potential pilots, who might possess the specific combination of skills required for mission success. The analysis had considered combat experience, test pilot qualifications, technical education, and demonstrated ability to innovate under pressure, along with psychological profiles that indicated capacity for independent decision-making in high-stress situations. The evaluation process had identified fewer than a dozen pilots who met the basic qualifications, and further analysis had reduced that number to 3 individuals who possessed all the necessary capabilities. The revelation that she was one of only 3 pilots considered qualified for the mission provided new context for General Hayes' decision to assign the operation to Captain Morrison. Hayes had based her selection on criteria that were relevant for routine reconnaissance missions, but inadequate for the unprecedented challenges posed by the Russian defensive network. Morrison's youth and technological fluency were advantages for normal operations, but they were insufficient for a mission that required the kind of deep understanding of aircraft systems that could only be gained through extensive experience with various operating conditions and configurations. Chen explained that the intelligence community had initially accepted General Hayes' pilot selection despite their reservations about Morrison's qualifications, because they hoped that the mission requirements had been overestimated, and that conventional stealth penetration techniques might prove successful. However, the analysis of previous mission failures had confirmed their worst fears about the sophistication of Russian defensive capabilities, making it clear that success would require pilot qualifications that extended far beyond normal operational standards. The stakes had become too high to accept anything less than optimal pilot selection. The discussion revealed layers of complexity in the mission that explained why conventional approaches had failed, and why Diana's specific background made her uniquely qualified to attempt what others couldn't accomplish. The Russian radar system had been specifically designed to counter American stealth technology using intelligence gathered from decades of observation and analysis of F-22 operations. Defeating such a system would require tactics that hadn't been previously employed or documented. Approaches that combine theoretical knowledge with practical experience in ways that very few pilots could manage. Diana found herself facing a decision that would affect not only her own career but potentially the strategic balance between NATO and Russian forces in Eastern Europe. The mission represented an opportunity to prove that experience and expertise remained relevant in an era that increasingly valued youth and technological adaptability over accumulated wisdom and hard-won knowledge. However, it also represented a risk that could end her career or her life if she failed to succeed, where others had already demonstrated the inadequacy of conventional approaches. Director Chen pulled up classified personnel files on her secure terminal, revealing the detailed analysis that had led intelligence agencies to identify Diana as one of only 3 pilots potentially capable of completing the Kaliningrad mission successfully. The evaluation criteria extended far beyond standard pilot qualifications, incorporating psychological assessments that measured capacity for independent decision-making under extreme stress, technical evaluations that tested understanding of stealth aircraft systems at levels that exceeded normal operational requirements, and combat assessments that analyzed performance in situations where established procedures had proven inadequate. The first criterion that distinguished Diana from other qualified pilots was her extensive experience with experimental F-22 configurations during her assignment at the Air Force Test Pilot School. Intelligence analysts had reviewed classified test reports that documented her participation in programs exploring the outer limits of stealth aircraft performance. Missions that had required her to operate the F-22 in ways that pushed both the aircraft and pilot to previously unexplored boundaries. These experiments had given her knowledge of aircraft capabilities that weren't documented in operational manuals or known to pilots who had only flown the Raptor in standard configurations. Halsvro. Chen explained that Diana's test pilot experience had included flights that evaluated experimental modifications to F-22 stealth systems, programs that explored how the aircraft's radar signature changed under various operating conditions and flight profiles. This knowledge would be critical for the Kaliningrad mission because defeating the Russian radar network would require maintaining optimal stealth characteristics while operating at performance levels that most pilots had never attempted. The mission would demand precise understanding of how different flight parameters affected radar detectability, information that Diana possessed but that wasn't available to pilots with conventional operational backgrounds. The second distinguishing factor was Diana's combat experience in Afghanistan, where she had developed tactical approaches for operating in contested airspace against adaptive enemies who didn't follow American doctrinal expectations. Intelligence analysis had revealed that her combat missions had required innovative solutions to problems that couldn't be solved through standard procedures, demonstrating her ability to develop effective tactics in real time when facing unexpected challenges. This capability would be essential for penetrating the Russian defensive network, because the mission would inevitably require adapting to conditions that couldn't be anticipated during mission planning. Diana's instructor pilot assignment had provided the third critical qualification that made her uniquely suited for the Kaliningrad mission. Her work training younger pilots on advanced F-22 systems had required her to develop comprehensive understanding of aircraft capabilities from multiple perspectives, combining operational knowledge with technical expertise and teaching methodology that emphasized fundamental principles over technological reliance. This multifaceted understanding of stealth aircraft systems would enable her to recognize subtle performance indicators that might provide early warning of detection or system degradation. The intelligence community's analysis had also considered psychological factors that would influence pilot performance during a mission that would test individual capabilities at levels that exceeded normal operational stress. Diana's personnel file contains psychological evaluations that indicated exceptional capacity for maintaining situational awareness and decision-making capability under extreme pressure, characteristics that had been demonstrated during combat missions where equipment failures and unexpected enemy actions had required her to complete objectives using degraded systems and modified tactics. These psychological strengths would be crucial for mission success because the Russian defensive network would create stress levels that could overwhelm pilots who hadn't been tested under similar conditions. Chen revealed that the decision to approach Diana directly rather than working through normal Air Force command channels reflected the intelligence community's assessment that General Hayes's pilot selection criteria were fundamentally flawed for this specific mission. Hayes had prioritized youth and technological adaptability over experience and proven capability, making her decision based on assumptions about pilot requirements that didn't account for the unprecedented challenges posed by the Russian radar system. The stakes were too high to accept pilot selection based on criteria that had been proven inadequate by 3 consecutive mission failures. The conversation shifted to technical details about the Russian defensive network that explained why conventional stealth penetration techniques had failed and why Diana's specific knowledge would be essential for developing successful countermeasures. Intelligence analysis had determined that the Russian system incorporated artificial intelligence algorithms that could learn from each encounter with American stealth aircraft, improving detection capabilities by analyzing flight patterns and performance characteristics observed during previous reconnaissance attempts. This adaptive capability meant that any future mission would face defensive systems that had been specifically calibrated to counter the tactics employed by the pilots who had already failed. On Tatsa, Diana learned that the Russian radar network combined multiple sensor types in ways that created overlapping detection capabilities across different frequency ranges and operational parameters. The system included traditional radar installations that had been upgraded with advanced signal processing capabilities, along with experimental sensors that operated in frequency ranges that American stealth aircraft hadn't been specifically designed to evade. Most concerning were mobile radar units that could be repositioned to create detection patterns that changed faster than American intelligence could track, making it impossible to predict safe penetration routes based on fixed installation locations. The adaptive nature of the Russian system meant that mission success would require tactics that couldn't be predetermined during briefing sessions or practiced in training scenarios. The pilot would need to assess threat conditions in real time and modify approach techniques based on immediate observation of defensive system behavior, skills that required deep understanding of both aircraft capabilities and enemy radar characteristics. This type of tactical adaptation couldn't be taught through simulator training or acquired through theoretical study. It had to be developed through experience with similar challenges in actual operational conditions. Chen explained that intelligence agencies had developed experimental countermeasures that might provide advantages against the Russian radar network, but implementing these countermeasures would require pilot skills that exceeded normal F-22 operational requirements. The techniques involved operating the aircraft in flight profiles that weren't covered by standard training programs, using combinations of altitude, airspeed, and aircraft attitude that would stress both pilot and machine, while maintaining stealth characteristics that depended on precise control of multiple variables simultaneously. Success would require pilot capabilities that combine test pilot precision with combat pilot adaptability. The mission profile that Chen outlined represented the most challenging reconnaissance operation that any American pilot had ever been asked to complete, involving penetration of airspace that was more heavily defended than any previous target, while gathering intelligence that required extended exposure to detection systems specifically designed to counter stealth aircraft. The operation would require flying at altitudes and speeds that pushed F-22 performance to its limits, while maintaining radio silence and operating without the support systems that normally assisted pilots during complex missions. Every aspect of the flight would depend on individual pilot skill and knowledge that couldn't be supplemented through technological assistance. Diana discovered that the intelligence value of successful mission completion extended far beyond immediate tactical concerns about Russian defensive capabilities in the Baltic region. The information gathered during the reconnaissance flight would influence American military planning for potential conflicts worldwide, determining whether stealth aircraft remained viable for operations in contested airspace or whether entirely new approaches to air warfare would need to be developed. The mission represented a test of American technological superiority that would affect defense spending, alliance relationships, and strategic planning for decades to come. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The conversation revealed that intelligence agencies had been monitoring Russian progress on anti-stealth technology for several years, observing incremental improvements that suggested eventual success in developing effective countermeasures to American stealth aircraft. The Kaliningrad installation represented the culmination of this research effort, incorporating technologies that had been tested at other locations but never deployed in an integrated defensive network. If the Russian system proved capable of consistently detecting and tracking American stealth aircraft, it would represent a technological breakthrough that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in modern warfare. Chen disclosed that American intelligence had identified specific vulnerabilities in the Russian radar network that could potentially be exploited by a pilot with sufficient knowledge of F-22 stealth characteristics and enemy sensor capabilities. These vulnerabilities were subtle and would exist only during brief windows when system parameters created gaps in defensive coverage, but they represented the only realistic opportunity for mission success given the sophistication of the threat environment. Exploiting these vulnerabilities would require timing and precision that exceeded anything previously attempted in operational conditions. The technical briefing that followed provided Diana with information about Russian radar capabilities that wasn't available through normal intelligence channels, data that had been gathered through methods she wasn't authorized to know about, but that was essential for understanding the challenges she would face during the mission. The Russian system incorporated sensor fusion techniques that combined inputs from multiple radar types to create detection capabilities that exceeded what any individual sensor could achieve, along with signal processing algorithms that could distinguish stealth aircraft signatures from background electromagnetic noise with unprecedented accuracy. Diana learned that the mission would require her to operate the F-22 using techniques that combined elements from her test pilot experience with innovations that she would need to develop specifically for this operation. The flight profile would involve constant adjustment of aircraft parameters to maintain optimal stealth characteristics while navigating through detection zones that would change unpredictably as mobile radar units reposition themselves based on intelligence gathered from previous reconnaissance attempts. Success would depend on her ability to recognize subtle changes in threat conditions and respond with tactical modifications that maintained mission effectiveness while avoiding detection. The conversation concluded with Chen's formal offer for Diana to accept the mission despite General Hayes's decision to assign it to Captain Morrison. The intelligence community possessed authority to override normal command decisions when national security interests required specific expertise that wasn't available through standard personnel assignment procedures. Diana would report directly to intelligence agencies rather than through Air Force command channels, providing operational independence that would enable her to make tactical decisions based on real-time assessment of mission conditions rather than predetermined procedures that might prove inadequate when facing adaptive enemy systems. The offer represented both an unprecedented opportunity and a significant risk for Diana's military career. Success would vindicate her belief that experience remained relevant in modern warfare and could potentially lead to assignments that would utilize her unique qualifications in ways that normal Air Force career progression couldn't provide. However, failure would likely end her career while confirming General Hayes's assessment that her age represented a liability rather than an asset, potentially affecting how the military evaluated experienced personnel for future high-stakes missions. Diana accepted the mission knowing that her decision would irreversibly alter the trajectory of her military career, but the technical briefing that followed revealed challenges that exceeded even her most pessimistic expectations about the complexity of penetrating Russian airspace. Director Chen led her to an adjacent room equipped with simulation systems that had been specifically configured to replicate the electromagnetic environment she would encounter over Kaliningrad, technology that combined real-time intelligence data with predictive modeling to create the most accurate representation possible of Russian defensive capabilities. The simulation revealed that the Russian radar network operated on principles that fundamentally challenged basic assumptions about stealth aircraft employment that had guided American tactical doctrine for over 3 decades. Traditional stealth penetration techniques relied on exploiting gaps in radar coverage or overwhelming defensive systems through coordinated attacks that saturated enemy sensors. But the Kaliningrad installation had been designed specifically to counter these approaches through adaptive algorithms that could modify detection parameters in real time based on observed aircraft behavior. Diana discovered that her mission would require flying the F-22 through what intelligence analysts described as a dynamic threat bubble that changed configuration continuously as mobile radar units repositioned themselves according to patterns that American cryptographers hadn't been able to predict. The defensive network incorporated machine learning algorithms that analyzed each radar contact to determine whether it represented a potential threat, using behavioral analysis to distinguish stealth aircraft from commercial aviation, weather phenomena, or electronic countermeasures that might be employed to confuse sensors. The simulation demonstrated that conventional approaches to stealth penetration would result in detection within minutes of entering Russian airspace, regardless of the altitude or flight profile employed during the approach. Previous mission failures had provided Russian engineers with sufficient data about F-22 performance characteristics to calibrate their sensors for optimal detection of American stealth aircraft, creating a situation where established tactics had been specifically countered through technological innovation. Diana would need to develop entirely new approaches that exploited vulnerabilities in the Russian system that hadn't been identified during previous reconnaissance attempts. The technical challenges extended beyond simply avoiding detection to include maintaining aircraft performance while operating in flight regimes that pushed F-22 systems to their design limits. The mission profile required sustained flight at altitudes and speeds that would stress both engines and airframe while maintaining stealth characteristics that depended on precise control of radar-reflecting surfaces and exhaust signatures. Any deviation from optimal parameters could result in detection, but maintaining those parameters would require constant attention to aircraft systems that normally operated automatically during routine missions. Diana learned that the experimental countermeasures developed by American intelligence agencies required modifications to standard F-22 operational procedures that hadn't been tested under combat conditions. Techniques that combined theoretical understanding of stealth technology with practical innovations that pushed the boundaries of what the aircraft had been designed to accomplish. These modifications would affect everything from engine operation to flight control responses, creating conditions where her extensive experience with F-22 systems in various configurations would be essential for maintaining aircraft control while implementing untested tactical approaches. The mission timeline revealed additional complexity that would test her endurance and concentration over an extended period that exceeded normal combat mission parameters. The reconnaissance flight would require over 6 hours of sustained high-stress operation, including penetration of Russian airspace, navigation through multiple radar coverage zones, data collection from specific intelligence targets, and exfiltration through defensive networks that would be actively searching for her aircraft after her presence had been detected through indirect means. The intelligence-gathering requirements presented their own challenges that went far beyond simply photographing installations or intercepting communications. Diana would need to collect electromagnetic signatures from Russian radar systems while they were actively attempting to detect her aircraft, requiring close approach to sensor installations that would increase her vulnerability to detection and engagement. The data collection process would involve exposing her aircraft to defensive systems for extended periods while maintaining flight profiles that preserved stealth characteristics despite proximity to hostile sensors. Director Chen explained that the mission success criteria had been modified based on lessons learned from previous reconnaissance attempts, acknowledging that complete stealth throughout the entire operation might not be achievable given the sophistication of Russian defensive systems. The revised objectives prioritized intelligence collection over perfect concealment, accepting that Diana might be detected during portions of the mission provided she could gather critical data and escape Russian airspace before defensive systems could achieve successful engagement. The escape phase of the mission presented challenges that were potentially more dangerous than initial penetration, because Russian forces would be actively searching for her aircraft once her presence had been confirmed through direct or indirect detection. The exfiltration route had been planned to exploit predicted gaps in radar coverage, but these gaps depended on intelligence estimates that might prove inaccurate when tested against actual defensive capabilities. Diana would need to adapt her escape tactics based on real-time assessment of threat conditions that couldn't be fully anticipated during mission planning. The psychological preparation for the mission involved techniques that Diana had never encountered during her previous combat deployments. Specialized training designed to maintain peak performance during extended periods of extreme stress, while operating experimental systems under conditions that exceeded normal human endurance limits. The training combined elements of test pilot methodology with combat pilot stress management, creating preparation protocols that addressed the unique challenges of flying alone in hostile airspace without support systems or backup options that normally provided safety margins during dangerous operations. Diana's preparation included extensive study of Russian radar technology and tactical doctrine that provided insights into enemy decision-making processes, and operational procedures that might create exploitable vulnerabilities during the mission. This intelligence briefing revealed capabilities that exceeded what she had learned during her previous assignments, information about enemy systems that was normally restricted to intelligence specialists rather than operational pilots. Understanding Russian defensive philosophy and tactical approaches would enable her to anticipate enemy responses and modify her own tactics accordingly. The aircraft modifications required for the mission involved installing experimental systems that enhanced F-22 stealth capabilities while adding intelligence collection equipment that would gather data about Russian defensive systems during the penetration flight. These modifications affected aircraft weight distribution and performance characteristics in ways that required Diana to relearn flight control responses and engine behavior that differed from standard F-22 configuration. The changes were subtle but significant enough to require extensive practice before she could operate the modified aircraft with the precision necessary for mission success. The communication protocols for the mission eliminated most of the support systems that normally assisted pilots during complex operations, requiring Diana to operate in complete radio silence while navigating through hostile airspace using only onboard systems and predetermined navigation points. She would have no contact with American forces once she entered Russian airspace, operating independently until she reached friendly territory after completing the intelligence collection phase. This isolation meant that any problems encountered during the mission would need to be solved through individual initiative rather than external assistance. Diana discovered that the mission represented more than just intelligence gathering about Russian defensive capabilities. It was also a test of American pilot training and aircraft technology that would influence future military planning and resource allocation decisions. Her performance would affect assessments of pilot experience versus technological innovation, determining whether the military would continue to value veteran expertise or accelerate the transition toward younger personnel who were presumed to be more adaptable to emerging technologies. The training schedule compressed months of preparation into weeks of intensive instruction that pushed Diana's learning capacity to its limits, while building familiarity with experimental systems and tactics that hadn't been previously employed in operational conditions. Each day involved multiple simulation sessions that tested different aspects of mission requirements, from basic aircraft handling with modified systems to complex scenarios that replicated expected threat conditions over Kaliningrad. The training revealed both strengths and weaknesses in her preparation that required constant adjustment of tactics and procedures. The final briefing sessions provided Diana with intelligence updates that reflected the most current information about Russian defensive capabilities, data that had been gathered through methods she wasn't authorized to know about but that was essential for understanding the threat environment she would face. The briefings confirmed that Russian engineers continued to modify their radar systems based on analysis of previous American reconnaissance attempts, creating an adaptive defensive network that would challenge any penetration attempt regardless of pilot experience or aircraft capabilities. Diana's doubts about mission feasibility were balanced by recognition that her unique qualifications made her the only realistic option for attempting what previous pilots had been unable to accomplish. Her combination of test pilot experience, combat operations background, and instructor pilot knowledge provided capabilities that couldn't be replicated through accelerated training programs or technological substitution. The mission would test whether individual expertise could overcome technological superiority, determining whether human factors remained relevant in modern warfare dominated by automated systems and artificial intelligence. The pressure to succeed extended beyond personal career considerations to include broader implications for American military strategy and alliance relationships that depended on maintaining technological advantages over potential adversaries. Mission failure would confirm Russian success in developing effective countermeasures to American stealth technology, potentially forcing fundamental changes to military planning that had been based on assumptions about air superiority that might no longer be valid in contested environments. As her training period neared completion, Diana understood that she was preparing for a mission that would define not only her own legacy, but also influence how the military evaluated the relationship between experience and innovation in an era of rapid technological change. Success would vindicate the value of veteran expertise, while failure would accelerate trends toward replacing experienced personnel with younger alternatives who were perceived as more adaptable to emerging operational requirements. Diana's F-22 Raptor lifted off from RAF Lakenheath at 0230 hours under cover of darkness, the modified aircraft responding differently to control inputs due to experimental stealth enhancements and intelligence gathering equipment that altered its weight distribution and aerodynamic characteristics. The initial climb phase required constant adjustment to flight parameters as she familiarized herself with how the modifications affected engine response and flight control sensitivity, changes that were subtle but significant enough to demand her complete attention during the critical early minutes of the mission. The flight path toward Russian airspace had been carefully planned to exploit gaps in commercial aviation tracking and military surveillance systems, routing Diana through corridors that would appear routine to observers while positioning her for approach to the Kaliningrad target area from an unexpected direction. She flew at altitudes that kept her aircraft within the flow of normal air traffic until reaching international waters, where she would begin the transition to mission configuration that would test every skill she had developed during 23 years of military aviation. As Diana approached the Baltic Sea, she initiated the first phase of stealth optimization procedures that would render her aircraft nearly invisible to conventional radar systems, while maintaining flight characteristics necessary for the complex navigation required during the penetration phase. The experimental modifications responded exactly as predicted during training simulations, but operating them under actual mission conditions created stress levels that exceeded anything she had experienced during preparation. Every system change required verification through instruments that provided feedback about stealth effectiveness and aircraft performance that would determine mission success or failure. The Russian defensive network came alive on her threat warning displays as she approached Kaliningrad airspace, showing electromagnetic signatures that matched intelligence predictions while revealing additional sensor activity that hadn't been detected during previous reconnaissance attempts. The radar emissions indicated a defensive system even more sophisticated than American analysts had projected, with sensor fusion capabilities that combined multiple radar types in ways that created overlapping detection zones designed specifically to counter stealth aircraft penetration attempts. Diana's first challenge came when mobile radar units began repositioning themselves in patterns that differed from predicted deployment schedules, forcing her to modify her approach route in real time based on threat assessments that required split-second decision-making while maintaining optimal stealth configuration. The Russian system was adapting to her presence faster than intelligence estimates had suggested possible, using behavioral analysis algorithms that could distinguish stealth aircraft signatures from background electromagnetic noise with accuracy that exceeded American expectations. The penetration phase required Diana to fly through radar coverage zones while maintaining flight parameters that pushed her aircraft to performance limits she had never explored during training or previous operational missions. The altitude and airspeed combinations necessary for optimal stealth effectiveness created conditions where engine operation and flight control responses tested her understanding of F-22 systems at levels that exceeded standard pilot qualification requirements. She was operating in flight regimes that combined test pilot precision with combat pilot adaptability. Her threat warning system indicated multiple radar locks as Russian sensors achieved brief detection of her aircraft, contacts that lasted only seconds before her stealth systems and tactical maneuvering broke the tracking solutions. Each detection episode provided Russian defensive systems with additional data about her aircraft's performance characteristics, information that could be used to improve tracking algorithms, and increase the probability of successful engagement during subsequent phases of the mission. She was fighting a technological battle where every tactical decision affected not only immediate survival but also mission success probability. The intelligence collection phase began as Diana approached her first target, a radar installation that represented the heart of the Russian anti-stealth research program and contained technology that American engineers needed to understand in order to develop effective countermeasures. The data-gathering process required maintaining precise positioning relative to the target while operating sensor equipment that exposed her aircraft to defensive systems for extended periods, creating vulnerability windows that tested her nerve and tactical judgment under extreme pressure. Diana discovered that the Russian radar system incorporated countermeasures she hadn't encountered during training simulations. Electronic warfare capabilities that attempted to disrupt her aircraft's navigation and communication systems while simultaneously improving their ability to maintain tracking solutions. The defensive network was fighting back with sophisticated techniques that required her to modify standard electronic countermeasures procedures while maintaining mission effectiveness and aircraft control under degraded system conditions. The second target approach revealed that Russian engineers had anticipated American reconnaissance attempts and had positioned defensive systems to create interlocking engagement zones that would challenge any penetration attempt regardless of stealth effectiveness or pilot skill. Diana found herself navigating through threat environments that exceeded the most pessimistic scenarios developed during mission planning, requiring tactical innovations that combined her test pilot experience with combat operations knowledge in ways that pushed her capabilities to their absolute limits. Her aircraft's experimental systems performed exactly as designed during the most critical phases of intelligence collection, maintaining stealth characteristics that enabled her to gather electromagnetic signatures and communication intercepts that would provide American analysts with comprehensive understanding of Russian anti-stealth capabilities. The data she was collecting represented years of intelligence work compressed into minutes of high-risk exposure to defensive systems that were actively attempting to achieve successful engagement of her aircraft. The mission's most dangerous phase began when Russian forces confirmed her presence through indirect detection methods and began coordinating defensive responses that involved repositioning mobile radar units and surface-to-air missile systems to intercept her anticipated escape route. Diana realized that her exfiltration would require tactical approaches that differed completely from her penetration techniques, forcing her to adapt to threat conditions that were changing faster than she could fully assess, while maintaining aircraft performance under stress levels that tested both machine and pilot endurance. Diana's escape from the primary target area required flying through radar coverage zones that had been specifically configured to counter stealth aircraft attempting to exit Russian airspace after completing reconnaissance missions. The defensive coordination she observed exceeded intelligence estimates about Russian tactical capabilities, demonstrating command and control effectiveness that suggested extensive preparation for exactly the type of mission she was attempting to complete. Every tactical decision required balancing immediate survival against mission success criteria that demanded successful intelligence extraction. The threat environment intensified as Russian interceptor aircraft launched from bases throughout the region, creating multiple simultaneous challenges that required Diana to evade both ground-based defensive systems and airborne threats that possessed sensors calibrated to detect American stealth aircraft. Her tactical situation was unprecedented in American military experience, combining challenges that exceeded anything previous pilots had faced while operating alone in hostile airspace, without support systems or backup options that normally provided safety margins during dangerous operations. Diana's navigation through the evolving threat environment required constant modification of flight parameters to maintain stealth effectiveness while avoiding detection zones that changed configuration as Russian forces repositioned defensive assets based on predictions about her likely escape routes. She was fighting a chess game where her opponents possessed superior numbers and technological preparation, while she relied on experience and tactical innovation to overcome systematic disadvantages that would have overwhelmed pilots with less comprehensive understanding of aircraft capabilities. The experimental countermeasures installed in her aircraft proved their value during the most critical engagement phases, providing stealth enhancements that enabled her to break radar tracking solutions and avoid missile engagement, despite operating in threat environments that exceeded the design specifications of standard F-22 systems. The modifications represented technological innovation that combined theoretical advancement with practical application, creating capabilities that wouldn't have been possible without the specific expertise Diana brought to their operational employment. Her aircraft's performance under extreme conditions validated years of engineering development and tactical innovation, while demonstrating that pilot expertise remained essential for successful employment of advanced technology in contested environments. The mission was proving that human factors continued to matter in warfare dominated by automated systems and artificial intelligence, showing that experienced personnel could achieve results that couldn't be replicated through technological substitution or accelerated training programs. Diana realized that her mission success would depend not only on completing intelligence collection objectives, but also on demonstrating that American stealth technology retained effectiveness against sophisticated countermeasures when employed by pilots who understood aircraft capabilities at levels that exceeded standard operational requirements. She was testing both technology and training philosophy in ways that would influence military planning and personnel policies for years to come. The final approach to friendly airspace required Diana to navigate through multiple engagement zones while maintaining aircraft systems that had been stressed beyond normal operational limits during hours of sustained high-performance flight. Her understanding of F-22 capabilities developed through test pilot experience in combat operations enabled her to maintain aircraft control and mission effectiveness despite system degradation that would have challenged pilots with less comprehensive knowledge of aircraft behavior under extreme conditions. As she crossed into international airspace with complete intelligence data successfully collected, Diana understood that she had accomplished more than mission completion. She had demonstrated that experience and expertise remained irreplaceable assets in modern warfare, validating approaches to pilot training and aircraft employment that emphasized human capability alongside technological innovation. Diana's escape from Russian airspace became a deadly game of three-dimensional chess as enemy forces coordinated their response with precision that exceeded every intelligence estimate about their tactical capabilities. Russian interceptor aircraft approached from multiple vectors simultaneously while ground-based defensive systems repositioned to create engagement zones that would challenge even the most sophisticated stealth aircraft, forcing her to employ tactics that pushed both her F-22 and her own abilities far beyond anything she had ever attempted in combat or training scenarios. The threat warning system in her cockpit painted a picture of coordinated enemy response that demonstrated Russian forces had been preparing for exactly this type of penetration mission, with predetermined defensive protocols that activated automatically when American stealth aircraft were detected within their airspace. Surface-to-air missile batteries that had remained dormant during her approach phase suddenly came online with targeting solutions that indicated they had been tracking her aircraft through methods that American intelligence hadn't anticipated, creating engagement envelopes that overlapped to eliminate potential escape routes. Diana realized that her survival depended on exploiting the one advantage that Russian engineers couldn't anticipate or counter through technological superiority: her ability to operate the F-22 in flight regimes that exceeded the aircraft's published performance specifications, while maintaining stealth characteristics that depended on precise control of multiple variables simultaneously. Her test pilot experience had given her knowledge of aircraft capabilities that weren't documented in operational manuals or known to intelligence agencies that might have provided information to potential adversaries about American stealth aircraft limitations. The crisis intensified when her aircraft's threat warning system detected missile launch signatures from multiple locations, indicating that Russian forces had achieved firing solutions despite her stealth configuration and evasive maneuvering. The incoming missiles represented technology that American intelligence hadn't encountered before, weapons that appeared capable of maintaining target tracking even when conventional radar systems lost contact with her aircraft. Diana found herself facing the most dangerous situation of her military career, with multiple simultaneous threats that would require perfect execution of defensive measures that had never been tested under actual combat conditions. Her response combined test pilot precision with combat pilot innovation, as she pushed her F-22 into a series of maneuvers that exploited the aircraft's superior performance capabilities while maintaining stealth configuration through techniques that she had developed during classified experimental programs. The modifications to her aircraft enabled performance characteristics that exceeded standard F-22 specifications, providing advantages that Russian defensive systems hadn't been calibrated to counter because they were based on capabilities that officially didn't exist in operational aircraft. The missile engagement that followed tested every skill Diana had developed during 23 years of military aviation, requiring her to defeat multiple incoming weapons while maintaining aircraft control under G-forces that approached human physiological limits. Her understanding of F-22 systems at the component level enabled her to operate the aircraft beyond normal safety margins while monitoring critical parameters that indicated approaching structural limits. She was flying at the edge of what both human and machine could withstand, while maintaining mission effectiveness under the most extreme conditions possible. Diana's breakthrough came when she recognized patterns in Russian defensive coordination that revealed vulnerabilities in their tactical doctrine, gaps that existed only because their system had been optimized to counter conventional stealth penetration techniques rather than the experimental approaches she was employing. Her ability to adapt tactics in real time based on immediate observation of enemy behavior enabled her to exploit these vulnerabilities before Russian forces could modify their defensive procedures to close the gaps she was using for survival. The escape maneuver that saved her life required flying her F-22 through a combination of altitude and airspeed that created aerodynamic conditions no pilot had ever attempted in operational circumstances. A flight profile that stressed both engines and airframe while maintaining stealth effectiveness through techniques that combined theoretical understanding with practical innovation. The maneuver succeeded because Diana possessed knowledge of aircraft capabilities that couldn't be acquired through normal training programs or replicated through technological assistance. Expertise that represented years of experience with various aircraft configurations under different operating conditions. Irreplaceable. Her aircraft's experimental systems proved their worth during the most critical phase of the escape sequence, providing stealth enhancements that enabled her to break multiple radar tracking solutions simultaneously while maintaining aircraft control under conditions that would have challenged even the most advanced automated flight systems. The technology worked exactly as designed, but only because Diana understood how to employ it in ways that maximized effectiveness, while compensating for limitations that weren't apparent to engineers who had designed the systems without operational experience. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The Russian response to her escape attempt revealed coordination capabilities that exceeded American intelligence estimates about enemy command and control effectiveness, demonstrating tactical flexibility that suggested extensive preparation for countering American stealth aircraft operations. Diana observed communication patterns and defensive repositioning that indicated Russian forces possessed detailed knowledge of F-22 performance characteristics and standard tactical employment procedures, information that had been used to develop countermeasures specifically designed to defeat American stealth penetration attempts. Her navigation through the evolving threat environment required constant assessment of changing tactical conditions while maintaining aircraft performance that pushed F-22 systems to their design limits without exceeding safety margins that would result in structural failure or system malfunction. Diana's understanding of aircraft behavior under extreme conditions enabled her to recognize subtle performance indicators that provided early warning of approaching limits, knowledge that allowed her to maintain maximum effectiveness while avoiding catastrophic failure. The final phase of her escape required Diana to demonstrate pilot skills that combined elements from every aspect of her military career, using test pilot precision to maintain aircraft control under extreme conditions, while employing combat pilot tactics to evade multiple simultaneous threats and instructor pilot knowledge to optimize system performance beyond standard operational parameters. Her success validated the importance of comprehensive experience that couldn't be replicated through accelerated training programs or technological substitution. Diana's aircraft emerged from the engagement zone with complete intelligence data successfully collected and structural integrity maintained despite operating under stress levels that exceeded normal F-22 specifications, proving that both pilot expertise and aircraft technology had evolved to levels that enabled mission success against the most sophisticated defensive systems potential adversaries could deploy. Her performance demonstrated that human factors remained critical for successful employment of advanced technology in contested environments where automated systems couldn't provide adequate responses to unexpected challenges. The intelligence she had gathered during the mission represented a complete assessment of Russian anti-stealth capabilities that would enable American engineers to develop effective countermeasures while providing strategic planners with accurate understanding of threat capabilities that would influence military planning for years to come. More importantly, her mission success had demonstrated that American stealth technology retained effectiveness against sophisticated countermeasures when employed by pilots who understood aircraft capabilities at levels that exceeded standard operational requirements. Diana realized that her escape from Russian airspace had proven more than mission feasibility. It had validated approaches to pilot training and aircraft development that emphasized human expertise alongside technological innovation, showing that experienced personnel could achieve results that couldn't be replicated through automated systems or accelerated training programs. Her success would influence military personnel policies and resource allocation decisions that affected how the Air Force balanced experience against innovation in an era of rapid technological change. As she crossed into friendly airspace with her mission objectives completely accomplished, Diana understood that she had participated in more than intelligence gathering. She had conducted a real-world test of American military capabilities that would determine how the United States prepared for future conflicts against adversaries who possessed sophisticated countermeasures to technologies that had provided strategic advantages for decades. Her performance had proven that pilot expertise remained an irreplaceable asset in modern warfare. The mission's success also validated her belief that experience and accumulated wisdom retained value in military operations despite technological trends that favored youth and adaptability over proven capability, demonstrating that some challenges required knowledge that could only be gained through years of flying in various conditions and configurations. Diana had proven that age represented an asset rather than a liability when combined with expertise that couldn't be acquired through any substitute for extensive operational experience. Her aircraft's performance data would provide engineers with information about F-22 capabilities under extreme conditions that would influence future aircraft development programs, while her tactical innovations would be studied and incorporated into training programs that prepared pilots for operations in contested environments where conventional procedures proved inadequate. The mission had generated knowledge that would benefit American military aviation for years to come, while proving that individual expertise remained essential for maximizing technology effectiveness. Diana's F-22 touched down at RAF Lakenheath 18 minutes ahead of schedule, her aircraft's landing flawless despite the stress of 6 hours operating at performance levels that had pushed both pilot and machine to their absolute limits. The modified Raptor rolled to a stop in front of a hangar where Director Chen waited alongside a team of intelligence analysts and aircraft technicians who would immediately begin downloading the massive amount of data she had collected during her penetration of what had been considered impenetrable Russian airspace. General Hayes stood at the edge of the reception area, her expression unreadable as she watched Diana climb down from the cockpit of an aircraft that officially hadn't flown a mission that never happened. The general's presence at the debriefing represented a significant departure from normal protocol, suggesting that word of the operation had reached command levels despite the mission's classification at levels that exceeded most senior officers' clearance requirements. Diana could see confusion and concern in Hayes's demeanor as she tried to understand how a pilot she had removed from the mission roster had somehow completed an operation that 3 other qualified aviators had been unable to accomplish. The immediate post-flight inspection revealed that Diana's F-22 had sustained no significant damage despite operating under conditions that exceeded the aircraft's design specifications for extended periods, validating both the engineering excellence of the stealth fighter and the precision with which Diana had operated the machine during the most challenging mission of her career. The experimental modifications had performed exactly as predicted, providing stealth enhancements that had enabled mission success while maintaining aircraft integrity under stress levels that would have challenged even the most robust military systems. Director Chen approached Diana as she completed her post-flight checklist, the intelligence official's expression showing satisfaction mixed with amazement at the comprehensive nature of the data that had been successfully collected during the reconnaissance mission. Major Cross, preliminary analysis of your intelligence take indicates complete mission success. You've provided us with information about Russian defensive capabilities that will influence American military planning for the next decade. The comment confirmed what Diana already knew. Her mission had accomplished objectives that extended far beyond routine intelligence gathering to include strategic assessment of threat capabilities that could determine the future balance of power in modern warfare. Captain Morrison appeared at the hangar entrance as Diana gathered her flight gear. The younger pilot's confusion evident as he struggled to understand how the mission he had been assigned to fly had been completed by someone else while he waited in the squadron ready room for briefings that never came. His expression showed the kind of professional bewilderment that resulted from discovering that events had occurred outside his knowledge or control, operations that challenged his understanding of how military assignments and command decisions functioned within normal Air Force procedures. Expression. Major Cross, Morrison said, his voice carefully controlled despite obvious frustration. I was told that the Kaliningrad mission had been postponed due to intelligence updates. General Hayes never mentioned that it had been reassigned. Diana could hear the professional concern in his words. Recognition that military operations had proceeded without his knowledge, despite his official assignment to the mission. Morrison was discovering that his perceived qualifications for the operation had been reconsidered by authorities whose judgment carried more weight than squadron-level command decisions. Diana's response reflected both professional courtesy and honest assessment of the situation that had developed during the past 72 hours. Captain, the mission requirements evolved beyond what any routine assignment could accommodate. The operation required capabilities that couldn't be developed through normal training programs, or acquired through technological familiarity alone. Her explanation acknowledged Morrison's qualifications while recognizing that the Kaliningrad mission had demanded expertise that exceeded standard pilot preparation, regardless of individual talent or technological adaptability. General Hayes joined the conversation as intelligence personnel began the detailed debriefing process that would continue for several days as analysts extracted every detail from Diana's experience penetrating Russian airspace. Major Cross, I need to understand how this mission was conducted outside normal command channels and why my personnel decisions were overruled by agencies that don't normally involve themselves in operational pilot assignments. The general's question revealed her frustration with command decisions that had bypassed her authority, while highlighting the unusual nature of the operation that had just been completed. Director Chen intervened before Diana could respond, her authority as a representative of intelligence agencies that operated at classification levels above normal military command structures evident in her calm but firm response to the general's concerns. General Hayes, the mission requirements evolved to levels that required specific expertise available from very few personnel within the entire Department of Defense. Major Cross possessed unique qualifications that made her the only realistic option for mission success, given the sophisticated nature of Russian defensive capabilities. The explanation that followed provided General Hayes with enough information to understand the scope of the operation without revealing details that exceeded her clearance level, a careful balance that acknowledged her command authority while protecting operational security requirements that governed intelligence missions. Chen explained that the mission had tested American technological capabilities against the most sophisticated defensive systems that potential adversaries had ever deployed, requiring pilot expertise that combined multiple specializations in ways that very few military personnel possessed simultaneously. Diana observed the exchange between Chen and Hayes with growing understanding of how her mission success would affect command attitudes toward pilot experience and qualification requirements for future high-stakes operations. Her completion of a mission that had defeated 3 other qualified pilots would challenge assumptions about the relationship between age and capability while validating approaches to pilot training that emphasized comprehensive experience over technological adaptability alone. The detailed debriefing sessions that followed revealed the full scope of what Diana had accomplished during her penetration of Russian airspace, providing American intelligence with comprehensive understanding of defensive capabilities that had been developed specifically to counter American stealth technology. The data she had collected included electromagnetic signatures from radar systems that incorporated artificial intelligence algorithms designed to defeat conventional stealth penetration techniques. Information that would enable American engineers to develop effective countermeasures while maintaining technological advantages in future conflicts. Analysis of Diana's mission performance demonstrated that success had depended on capabilities that couldn't be replicated through accelerated training programs or technological substitution, validating the importance of experienced personnel who possessed knowledge that had been accumulated through years of flying in various conditions and configurations. Her tactical innovations during the mission would be studied and incorporated into training programs, while her understanding of aircraft capabilities under extreme conditions would influence future F-22 employment doctrine. The intelligence assessment confirmed that Russian defensive systems had incorporated countermeasures specifically designed to defeat American stealth aircraft, using information that had been gathered through decades of observation and analysis of F-22 operations. Diana's success in penetrating these defenses had proven that American stealth technology retained effectiveness when employed by pilots who understood aircraft capabilities at levels that exceeded standard operational requirements, knowledge that couldn't be acquired through routine training or theoretical study alone. General Hayes requested a private conversation with Diana following the initial debriefing sessions, a discussion that would address the command decisions that had led to the mission reassignment and the implications for future personnel policies within the Air Force. The meeting represented an opportunity for the general to understand how her assessment of pilot qualifications had proven inadequate for the specific challenges posed by the Kaliningrad operation. Major Cross, Hayes began, her tone reflecting professional respect mixed with acknowledgement of errors in judgment. I made my pilot selection based on criteria that I believed were appropriate for modern air operations. Your mission success has demonstrated that my understanding of the requirements was fundamentally flawed. The admission represented significant professional courage from a senior officer who was acknowledging that her command decisions had been based on assumptions that proved incorrect when tested against operational reality. Diana's response reflected both professional courtesy and honest assessment of the factors that had influenced command decisions throughout the squadron. General, your selection criteria were appropriate for routine operations and normal mission parameters. The Kaliningrad mission required capabilities that exceeded standard requirements in ways that couldn't be anticipated through normal planning processes. Her explanation acknowledged that Hayes had made reasonable decisions based on available information, while recognizing that the mission had demanded expertise that wasn't apparent from conventional pilot evaluation methods. The conversation that followed addressed broader implications for Air Force personnel policies and pilot training programs that would be affected by lessons learned from the Kaliningrad mission. Diana's success had demonstrated that some operations required knowledge that could only be gained through extensive experience with aircraft systems under various operating conditions, expertise that couldn't be accelerated through technological innovation, or enhanced training programs designed to compress learning timelines. Hayes acknowledged that her emphasis on youth and technological adaptability had overlooked the irreplaceable value of experience that had been accumulated through years of flying in challenging conditions where standard procedures proved inadequate. The mission had proven that pilot expertise remained essential for successful employment of advanced technology in contested environments where automated systems couldn't provide adequate responses to unexpected challenges that required innovative solutions developed in real time. Director Chen rejoined the conversation to provide additional context about how Diana's mission success would influence future intelligence operations and military planning processes that depended on understanding adversary capabilities. The operation had demonstrated that American stealth technology could penetrate the most sophisticated defensive systems when employed by pilots who possessed comprehensive understanding of aircraft capabilities, knowledge that would be essential for maintaining strategic advantages in future conflicts against adversaries who continued to develop countermeasures to American technological superiority. The meeting concluded with General Hayes' announcement that Diana would be recommended for promotion and assignment to positions that would utilize her unique expertise in ways that normal Air Force career progression couldn't provide. The mission's success had validated her belief that experience represented an asset rather than a liability in modern military operations, demonstrating that accumulated wisdom retained value despite technological trends that favored youth and presumed adaptability over proven capability gained through extensive operational experience. Hey and no way Bonsari. 6 months after the Kaliningrad mission, Diana stood in the Pentagon briefing room where the Secretary of Defense was announcing the establishment of the 1st Special Reconnaissance Squadron, a classified unit that would operate the most advanced stealth aircraft in the American inventory on missions that conventional forces couldn't accomplish. Her promotion to lieutenant colonel had been accompanied by assignment as the squadron's commanding officer, a position that would utilize her unique expertise while validating the military's recognition that experience remained irreplaceable for certain types of operations. The new squadron represented a fundamental shift in Air Force thinking about pilot qualifications and mission requirements, acknowledging that some operations demanded capabilities that couldn't be developed through standard training programs or acquired through technological familiarity alone. Diana's success in penetrating Russian airspace had influenced personnel policies throughout the military, creating recognition that accumulated expertise possessed value that exceeded the presumed advantages of youth and technological adaptability that had dominated recent command decisions. Her first assignment as squadron commander involved selecting pilots who possessed the specific combination of skills necessary for operations that pushed the boundaries of what stealth aircraft could accomplish, a process that required evaluating candidates based on criteria that differed significantly from standard Air Force pilot qualification requirements. The selection process emphasized combat experience, test pilot backgrounds, and demonstrated ability to innovate under pressure rather than simulator performance or technological fluency that had been prioritized during normal pilot assignments. Diana discovered that her mission success had generated interest from allies who faced similar challenges in operating against adversaries who possessed sophisticated countermeasures to stealth technology, leading to requests for training programs that would share American expertise with pilots from NATO countries and other strategic partners. The international cooperation that resulted would enhance alliance capabilities while providing Diana's squadron with experience operating alongside foreign personnel who brought different perspectives and tactical approaches to stealth aircraft employment. The intelligence data she had collected during the Kaliningrad mission continued to influence American military planning as analysts extracted details about Russian defensive capabilities that revealed the sophistication of countermeasures being developed by potential adversaries. The information had enabled American engineers to modify F-22 systems and develop new tactical employment methods that maintained stealth effectiveness against advanced radar systems, innovations that would benefit the entire stealth aircraft community while preserving American technological advantages. Captain Morrison had been among the first pilots selected for Diana's new squadron, his technological fluency and adaptability proving valuable when combined with intensive training that emphasized fundamental flying principles and decision-making under extreme conditions. The assignment represented recognition that his capabilities were significant, despite his lack of experience with the unique challenges that had characterized the Kaliningrad mission, acknowledging that the squadron would benefit from personnel who brought different strengths to complex operational requirements. Morrison's inclusion in the Special Reconnaissance Squadron had required him to undergo training that differed significantly from standard F-22 instruction, programs that emphasized understanding aircraft capabilities at levels that exceeded normal operational requirements while developing tactical judgment that couldn't be acquired through simulator sessions or theoretical study. His progress demonstrated that younger pilots could develop the expertise necessary for advanced stealth operations when provided with appropriate instruction that emphasized experience-based knowledge alongside technological proficiency. The squadron's first operational mission involved reconnaissance of Chinese military installations in the South China Sea, operations that tested the lessons learned from Diana's penetration of Russian airspace while evaluating the effectiveness of modified F-22 systems against different types of defensive networks. The missions demonstrated that American stealth technology retained effectiveness when employed by pilots who understood aircraft capabilities at levels that enabled optimal performance under challenging conditions. Diana's leadership of these operations validated her belief that successful stealth aircraft employment required comprehensive understanding of both technology and tactics that could only be developed through extensive experience with various aircraft configurations and operating conditions. Her ability to train pilots who possessed different backgrounds and skill levels demonstrated that expertise could be shared and enhanced through programs that emphasized fundamental principles rather than standardized procedures that might prove inadequate when facing adaptive adversaries. The success of the Special Reconnaissance Squadron influenced broader changes within Air Force personnel policies, as senior leadership recognized that some missions required capabilities that couldn't be developed through accelerated training programs or technological substitution. Diana's approach to pilot selection and training became a model for other specialized units that needed personnel capable of operating advanced systems under conditions that exceeded normal operational parameters. General Hayes had been reassigned to oversight of pilot training programs throughout the Air Force, a position that enabled her to implement lessons learned from the Kaliningrad mission while developing instruction methods that balanced technological innovation with experience-based knowledge. Her collaboration with Diana in developing new training approaches demonstrated professional growth that acknowledged previous errors in judgment while incorporating insights that would benefit future pilot development programs. The relationship between Hayes and Diana had evolved into a professional partnership that combined their different perspectives on pilot training and capability development, creating synergy that enhanced both immediate operational effectiveness and long-term strategic planning for stealth aircraft employment. Their cooperation demonstrated that generational differences in approach to military aviation could be reconciled through recognition that both experience and innovation contributed essential elements to overall mission success. Diana's squadron had expanded to include pilots from multiple services and allied nations, creating diversity that enhanced tactical innovation while sharing expertise across different military cultures and operational philosophies. The international cooperation had revealed that challenges facing stealth aircraft operations were common to all nations that possessed advanced military aviation capabilities, creating opportunities for collaboration that strengthened alliance relationships while improving overall defensive capabilities. The training programs Diana developed emphasized decision-making under uncertainty and adaptation to unexpected challenges, rather than memorization of procedures that might prove inadequate when facing sophisticated adversaries who had studied American tactical doctrine. Her approach recognized that future conflicts would require innovation and flexibility that couldn't be predetermined through standard planning processes, capabilities that could only be developed through experience with various operational scenarios and aircraft configurations. Colonel Stone had been promoted to Deputy Commander of the Special Reconnaissance Squadron, his combat experience complementing Diana's test pilot background while providing continuity that enhanced unit effectiveness during rapid expansion and increased operational tempo. His understanding of the relationship between pilot experience and mission success had been validated through observations of how different types of training affected performance under stress, knowledge that influenced selection criteria, and instruction methods throughout the squadron. The squadron's operations had demonstrated that American stealth technology could maintain effectiveness against the most sophisticated defensive systems when employed by pilots who possessed comprehensive understanding of aircraft capabilities and tactical employment methods. Diana's success in developing training programs that produced such pilots had influenced military education throughout the Air Force, while providing a model for other specialized units that required personnel capable of operating advanced systems under extreme conditions. Director Chen had been promoted to Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Her success in managing the Kaliningrad operation and subsequent special reconnaissance missions demonstrating the value of collaboration between intelligence agencies and operational units. Her continued cooperation with Diana's squadron provided continuity that enhanced mission planning while ensuring that intelligence requirements were integrated into operational procedures from the earliest planning stages. The intelligence data collected by Diana's squadron during operations in multiple theaters had provided American strategic planners with comprehensive understanding of adversary capabilities that influenced defense spending priorities and alliance relationships throughout the world. The information had revealed that challenges to American technological superiority were more widespread than previously understood, creating requirements for enhanced cooperation and capability development that extended beyond traditional alliance structures. Diana's promotion to full colonel had been accompanied by assignment to Pentagon staff positions that would influence Air Force policy development and resource allocation decisions affecting pilot training and aircraft development programs throughout the service. Her experience with advanced stealth operations would inform strategic planning that balanced immediate operational requirements with long-term capability development needs that reflected evolving threat environments. The recognition Diana received for her contributions to national security extended beyond military promotions to include civilian honors that acknowledged her role in maintaining American technological advantages while developing training programs that enhanced overall military effectiveness. Her success had demonstrated that individual expertise could influence institutional policies and strategic planning in ways that affected national security interests far beyond immediate operational requirements. The legacy of Diana's Kaliningrad mission continued to influence military aviation as her tactical innovations were studied and incorporated into training programs, while her understanding of aircraft capabilities under extreme conditions informed future development projects. Her demonstration that experience remained relevant in modern warfare had affected personnel policies throughout the military while validating approaches to capability development that emphasized human expertise alongside technological innovation. Her final reflection on the mission that had transformed her career acknowledged that success had resulted from the combination of individual expertise with institutional support that enabled innovation and risk-taking necessary for accomplishing objectives that exceeded normal operational parameters. The validation of experience-based knowledge alongside technological capability had influenced how the military balanced competing priorities while preparing for future conflicts against adversaries who continued to develop sophisticated countermeasures to American advantages. 2 years after her historic penetration of Russian airspace, Colonel Diana Cross stood before a packed auditorium at the Air Force Academy, addressing the newest generation of pilot candidates who would inherit the responsibility for maintaining American air superiority in an increasingly complex global security environment. Her presence as the keynote speaker represented recognition that her experiences had reshaped understanding of what military aviation could accomplish when individual expertise was properly valued and supported by institutional commitment to excellence over convenience. The cadets listening to her presentation represented the future of military aviation, young men and women who would fly aircraft that didn't yet exist against threats that hadn't been fully identified by current intelligence assessments. Diana's message emphasized that technological advancement alone couldn't guarantee mission success without pilots who possessed the judgment and adaptability necessary for operating advanced systems under conditions that exceeded design specifications and training parameters. Her experiences had demonstrated that human factors remained critical for maximizing the effectiveness of even the most sophisticated military technology. Diana's story had become legendary within military aviation circles, not just for the tactical success of penetrating supposedly impenetrable Russian airspace, but for the broader implications about how experience and accumulated wisdom could overcome systematic disadvantages that favored youth and technological familiarity over proven capability. Her mission had influenced pilot training programs throughout the military while affecting personnel policies that balanced innovation with institutional knowledge that couldn't be replicated through accelerated development programs. Hiwalager, the special reconnaissance squadron she commanded, had completed dozens of classified missions that demonstrated American stealth technology retained effectiveness against the most sophisticated defensive systems, when employed by pilots who understood aircraft capabilities at levels that exceeded standard operational requirements. These operations had provided strategic intelligence that influenced military planning worldwide, while proving that individual expertise could determine the outcome of missions that affected national security interests far beyond immediate tactical objectives. Her influence extended beyond operational success to include fundamental changes in how the Air Force evaluated pilot qualifications and training requirements for advanced aircraft systems. Diana's approach to developing capabilities that combine technological proficiency with experience-based judgment had been adopted by training programs throughout the military, creating recognition that some types of knowledge couldn't be acquired through standardized instruction or technological substitution, regardless of individual talent or institutional resources. The international cooperation that had developed around her squadron's operations had strengthened alliance relationships while sharing expertise that enhanced collective security capabilities among nations that faced similar challenges from adversaries who possessed sophisticated countermeasures to stealth technology. Diana's role in developing training programs for Allied pilots had demonstrated that military expertise could transcend national boundaries while creating partnerships that multiplied individual capabilities through collaborative innovation and shared operational experience. Captain Morrison, now Major Morrison, had become one of the squadron's most effective pilots through training programs that combined his technological fluency with experience-based knowledge that had been accumulated through extensive operations in contested environments. His development demonstrated that generational differences in approach to military aviation could be reconciled through instruction that emphasized fundamental principles alongside technological innovation, creating capabilities that exceeded what either experience or youth could accomplish independently. The broader implications of Diana's success continued to influence military policy, as senior leadership recognized that some operational requirements demanded capabilities that couldn't be developed through conventional career progression or standard training programs. Her demonstration that age could represent an asset rather than a liability had affected personnel policies throughout the military while creating recognition that accumulated expertise possessed value that couldn't be measured through traditional evaluation methods or replicated through technological advancement. The technological innovations that had resulted from analysis of Diana's mission performance had enhanced F-22 capabilities while influencing development programs for future stealth aircraft that would incorporate lessons learned from operations against sophisticated defensive systems. Her understanding of aircraft behavior under extreme conditions had provided engineers with information that couldn't be obtained through simulator testing or theoretical analysis, knowledge that would benefit military aviation for decades through improvements that enhanced both capability and safety. Diana's reflection on the transformation of her career acknowledged that individual success had been possible only through institutional support that valued innovation and risk-taking necessary for accomplishing objectives that challenged established procedures and conventional wisdom. Her experience had demonstrated that military effectiveness depended on balancing competing priorities while maintaining commitment to excellence that enabled personnel to achieve results that exceeded normal expectations and standard performance measures. The recognition Diana received for her contributions to national security had included assignments to policy development positions that influenced strategic planning and resource allocation decisions affecting military aviation throughout the Department of Defense. Her perspective on the relationship between pilot experience and mission effectiveness had informed discussions about capability development that balanced immediate operational soirees requirements with long-term strategic needs that reflected evolving threat environments and technological advancement. General Hayes, now serving as commander of Air Education and Training Command, had implemented Diana's approaches to pilot development throughout Air Force training programs while acknowledging that her initial assessment of pilot qualifications had been based on assumptions that proved inadequate when tested against operational reality. The collaboration between Hayes and Diana in developing new training methods had demonstrated that professional growth could result from recognizing errors in judgment while incorporating lessons learned from operational experience. The enduring legacy of Diana's Kaliningrad mission continued to influence military aviation as her tactical innovations were studied and adapted by pilots facing similar challenges in different operational environments. Her demonstration that stealth aircraft could penetrate the most sophisticated defensive systems through innovative employment techniques had maintained American technological advantages while providing capabilities that enhanced deterrence and strategic stability in regions where potential conflicts threatened international security. Her final message to the Academy cadets emphasized that military aviation would continue to evolve through the combination of technological advancement and human expertise that enabled innovation necessary for maintaining superiority against adversaries who possessed sophisticated capabilities and adaptive strategies. Diana's career had proven that success resulted from valuing both experience and innovation while creating institutional support for excellence that enabled individuals to achieve results that exceeded normal expectations and contributed to national security objectives that affected global stability and peace. The standing ovation that concluded her presentation reflected recognition that Diana's story represented more than individual achievement. It demonstrated that military effectiveness depended on institutions that valued expertise, while supporting innovation necessary for accomplishing missions that challenged conventional wisdom and established procedures. Her success had influenced an entire generation of military aviators while creating legacy that would continue to affect how the Air Force balanced competing priorities in an era of rapid technological change and evolving security challenges. As Diana stepped down from the podium, a young cadet approached her with a question that made her smile. "Colonel, what would you say to someone who thinks they're too old to make a difference?" Diana paused, remembering that moment 2 years ago when General Hayes had dismissed her with a laugh. "I'd tell them that every too old is just someone else's not experienced enough," she replied. "Age isn't about the years you've lived. It's about the wisdom you've earned." The cadet nodded thoughtfully. "My grandmother always said she was too old to learn computers. Then she started a YouTube channel that got 1 million subscribers." Diana laughed. "Your grandmother sounds like someone who would make an excellent pilot." Later that evening, Diana received a secure message that made her heart race. Intelligence had detected new Chinese stealth aircraft conducting test flights over the South China Sea. The message was brief. Ghost Squadron requested for immediate deployment. Mission classification: Beyond Black. She looked at her F-22 through the hangar window, its angular surfaces gleaming under the lights. At 49, she was just getting started. What did you think of Colonel Diana Cross's incredible journey from rejection to redemption? Her story proves that experience isn't just valuable, it's irreplaceable. In a world that often dismisses wisdom for youth, Diana showed that the most dangerous assumption is underestimating someone based on age alone. Have you ever been underestimated because of your age, background, or experience? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you proved the doubters wrong. If you enjoyed this thrilling tale of military courage and vindication, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss our incredible true stories. What kind of story should we explore next? Drop your suggestions below. Remember, your greatest strength might be exactly what others see as your weakness.